Day 1095. 3 years to the day since any of my children had called me. I sat on the sagging pull-out couch in my studio apartment, the springs digging into my hip like they did every morning, and scrolled through my phone. There was David's latest post, him and his wife grinning on a yacht in the Bahamas. Number blessed, the caption said. Blessed. I clicked to the next one. Rebecca's new BMW, parked in front of her McMansion. Then Michael's promotion announcement. Jennifer's kitchen renovation. Sarah's engagement photos in front of the Eiffel Tower. 5 children. 5 beautiful, successful, thriving children. And not one of them knew if their mother was alive or dead. The smell of fabric softener and hot dryer lint seeped through the floorboards from the laundromat below. It was Wednesday, which meant Mrs. Chen would be doing her industrial loads all morning. The whole apartment would smell like cheap detergent until noon. I set my phone down on the card table, the only table I had, and looked around the studio. 400 square feet of peeling linoleum and water-stained ceiling tiles, a mini fridge that hummed too loud, a hot plate with 1 working burner, 3 sweaters hanging on the back of the bathroom door, the same 3 I'd worn in rotation for 1,000 days. My phone buzzed. For a second my heart jumped. But it was just a notification. Rebecca had posted again. A family photo, this time her husband, their 3 kids all matching in white linen shirts on some beach at sunset. Missing Grandma today, the caption said, with a little heart emoji. I actually laughed out loud. The sound echoed in the empty apartment, bitter and sharp. Missing me. She was missing me while I sat 7 miles away in a studio that smelled like someone else's laundry, eating 99-cent soup straight from the can. I walked to the calendar hanging by the door, the only decoration in the whole place. It was one of those free ones from the insurance company, 3 years out of date. But I'd kept it for one reason. Day 1095 was circled in red marker. Today's date. 3 years since my husband died. 3 years since the funeral, when all 5 of my children had hugged me and promised they'd check on me. 3 years since I'd heard any of their voices outside of an automated birthday text. I traced the red circle with my finger. They thought I'd fallen apart after he died, that I'd become one of those needy, clingy widows who called too much, who needed too much, who reminded them too much of their own mortality. So they'd started letting my calls go to voicemail. Then they stopped returning the voicemails. Then they stopped answering texts. And eventually, I stopped trying. The thing was, and this was the part that would destroy them when they found out I didn't need them. Not financially, anyway. I needed to know if they loved me without the money. My husband and I had planned this together, the year before he died. He'd seen how our children had changed, how they only called when they wanted something, how they measured their love in dollars and inheritance speculation. Test them, he'd said, his voice already weak from the cancer. Live like you have nothing. See if they care. So I'd moved into this studio, stopped wearing my jewelry, drove my old car until it died, then took the bus, posted nothing on social media, became invisible. And I waited. I waited for one of them to notice their mother had disappeared. But they never did. My phone buzzed again. Another post. This time it was Michael, showing off his new home theater system. $7,000 worth of electronics so he could watch movies louder. $7,000. I'd called him 6 months ago, after my car finally gave out. Asked if he could give me a ride to the grocery store. Mom, I'm slammed with work, he'd said. Can't you take an Uber? An Uber. He'd wanted his 6-8-year-old mother to take an Uber because he was too busy to drive 15 minutes. I'd walked to the store that day, 2 miles each way, carrying grocery bags that cut into my palms. He'd posted about his home theater 3 days later. The knock on my door made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one knew I lived here except the landlord, and he only knocked when the rent was late. Which it wasn't, obviously. I'd paid 6 months in advance, in cash. I looked through the peephole. Linda. My sister stood in the hallway, holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil, her face creased with worry. I closed my eyes. Linda wasn't supposed to visit. She was supposed to be in Florida for another month. But I opened the door anyway, because what choice did I have? Surprise, she said, her smile bright and completely unaware. I came back early and thought I'd. She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes went wide as they took in the apartment behind me. The sagging couch, the card table, the hot plate, the 3 sweaters. The casserole dish slipped in her hands. She caught it, barely. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What happened to you?" I'd prepared for this. I had a whole story ready about downsizing, about wanting to simplify, about finding peace in minimalism. But looking at my sister's face, at the horror and heartbreak written across it, I couldn't say any of it. "It's not what you think," I started. "You're living in a studio above a laundromat." Her voice cracked. "Where are your things? Your furniture? That beautiful house?" "Linda, have you been eating?" She pushed past me into the apartment, setting the casserole on the card table like she was afraid it might contaminate something. "Do your children know you're living like this?" And there it was, the question I'd been waiting 3 years to answer. "No," I said quietly. "They don't." "What do you mean they don't? How could they not?" She spun around, her face flushing red. "I'm calling David right now. And Rebecca. All of them. This is unacceptable. Their mother is living in." "Don't." I grabbed her wrist before she could pull out her phone. "Don't call them." "Why not?" I looked at my sister, my younger sister, who'd always been the soft one, the one who believed the best in everyone, and I told her the truth. "Because I'm testing them, and they're failing." Linda stared at me. "You're testing them? I need to show you something." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, the one I never used in public, the one I kept hidden under 3 passwords. I turned the screen toward her. She looked at the balance, then looked again, then grabbed the phone to make sure she was reading it right. That's not?" $8 million, I said. "Give or take. From your brother-in-law's inheritance and investments. None of the children know." Linda's legs gave out. She sat down hard on my couch, the springs screaming under her weight. "You've been living like this," she gestured around the studio, "for 3 years, and you have $8 million? I needed to know if they loved me or just loved what I could give them." My voice was calm. I'd practiced this. And now I know. Linda's face went through about 15 different expressions in 5 seconds. Shock, confusion, anger, understanding. Then something else. Something that looked almost like admiration. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I walked to the calendar and pulled it off the wall. Day 1095 stared back at me, that red circle like a target finally hit. "You have a nice camera on your phone, don't you?" I asked. Linda nodded slowly. "Good." I smiled for the first time in 3 years. "Because tomorrow we're going to film a little apartment tour. And you're going to post it where all 5 of my children can see it." "I don't understand." "You will." I pulled my suitcase out from under the couch. I'd kept it packed for 6 months, waiting for this moment. "First, you're going to help me move. Then you're going to help me show my children exactly what they've been ignoring." Linda stared at the suitcase, then at me, then at my phone still showing that $8 million balance. "Where are we moving you to?" she asked carefully. I picked up my phone and opened the Photos app. I showed her the pictures I'd been looking at every night for the past 2 years. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops. A chandelier that cost more than this entire building. "The penthouse I bought 18 months ago," I said. "The one I've been keeping empty while I waited in this studio for just one of my children to care enough to find me." Linda's mouth fell open. "Tomorrow we film, and then we see how fast they remember they have a mother." I grabbed the last sweater off the bathroom door and stuffed it into my suitcase. The day Linda walked into my studio and gasped at the state I was living in, I knew it was time to move to phase 2, but first, I had to make sure they all saw what they'd been ignoring. My phone started buzzing at 3:47 p.m., exactly 12 minutes after Linda hit post. I was standing in my penthouse kitchen, with its marble countertops and commercial-grade appliances I'd never used, watching my sister film a slow pan across the living room. She had no idea what she was doing. She thought she was just showing off her sister's wonderful new place to make me feel supported. She had no idea she'd just detonated a bomb. The light in here is amazing, Linda gushed to her phone camera, spinning to capture the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched out behind her, 23 stories of view that cost me $42,000 a month in maintenance alone. I'm so proud of my sister for this fresh start. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Then it started ringing. David. I looked at his name on the screen and felt nothing, just watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Aren't you going to get that? Linda asked, lowering her phone. Keep filming, I said. Show them the chandelier. She frowned but did what I asked, tilting her camera up to catch the crystal fixture that cost more than most people's cars. It cast rainbow prisms across the white walls, little spots of color that danced when the air conditioning kicked on. My phone lit up again. Rebecca this time. Then Michael. Then Jennifer. Then Sarah. All 5 of them, calling within minutes of each other, like they'd coordinated, like they had some kind of emergency alert system for when their mother's net worth became visible. Okay, seriously, Linda said, stopping her video. Your phone is going crazy. What's... They haven't called me in 3 years, I interrupted, my voice flat. Not once, but 12 minutes after you post a video of this apartment, suddenly I'm very popular. Linda's face went pale. She looked at her phone, then at mine, now displaying 6 missed calls and counting then back at me. Oh, she whispered. Oh no. Oh yes. I picked up my phone as it started ringing again. David, round 2. I silenced it and held it up so Linda could see the screen. Watch this. The texts started rolling in. David, Mom? Is this real? Why didn't you tell us about the new place? Rebecca. Mom, call me back right now. We need to talk. Michael. Nice apartment. Didn't know you were doing so well. We should catch up. Jennifer. Mom, I've been so worried about you. This is wonderful news. Can I come visit? Sarah. Is everything okay? That apartment looks expensive. Do you need help? I read them out loud to Linda, one by one, and watched her face crumble. They don't even sound concerned, she said. They sound interested, I finished. They sound interested. My phone started ringing again. I set it face down on the marble counter, where it buzzed like an angry wasp, and walked to the living room windows. The city looked different from up here. Smaller. All those people rushing around below, thinking their problems mattered, thinking their lives were important. From 23 stories up, they were just dots. That's what I'd been to my children for 3 years. A dot, easy to ignore, easy to forget. I don't understand, Linda said, following me. When you said you were testing them, I thought. I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think it would be like this. Like what? Like they only care because you have money. I turned to look at her. My baby sister, who'd driven 6 hours to bring me a casserole when she thought I was struggling, who'd cried when she saw my studio apartment, who'd helped me move without asking questions. That's exactly what I needed to know, I said quietly, and now I do. My phone started ringing again. I walked back to the counter and looked at it. David was calling for the 4th time. The photo I had saved for him from 5 years ago, when he still smiled in pictures with me, stared up from the screen. He looked younger there, happier. Like he still remembered what it felt like to love someone without calculating what you'd get in return. I let it go to voicemail. What are you going to do? Linda asked. The texts kept coming. I watched them pile up, one after another, each one more desperate than the last. David. Mom, please call me back. I'm worried. Rebecca. We need to talk about your living situation. This is a big change. Michael. How did you afford this? Call me. Jennifer. I'm coming over. What's the address? Sarah. Mom, answer your phone. 3 years of silence, and now they couldn't stop trying to reach me. I picked up my phone and opened the photo Linda had posted. It had 63 likes already, mostly her friends, but I recognized some of the names. Neighbors from my old house. Women from my book club, back when I had a book club. People who'd known me when I was someone's wife instead of someone's inconvenient mother. The comments were what I'd expected. Gorgeous place. Good for her. Wow, what a view. Nobody asked how I'd afforded it. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just saw the expensive apartment and assumed it meant I was winning at life. Just like my children. "Linda," I said, still staring at my phone, "I need you to do something for me. Anything. In about 5 minutes, David is going to call you. Then Rebecca. Then probably all of them." I looked up at her. "And they're going to ask you questions about where I got the money, about whether I'm okay, about how long I've had this place." Linda's eyes widened. "What do I tell them?" "The truth." I smiled. "Tell them you have no idea. Tell them I haven't talked about my finances with you. Tell them." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Tell them I seem different, distant, like something changed. But trust me." My phone buzzed with another text. This one was from David to a group chat I didn't know existed. The preview showed 5 names. All my children. I opened it. "David, is anyone getting through to Mom?" Rebecca. "No. She's ignoring me." Michael. "Same. This is weird." Jennifer. "Maybe she's just busy settling in?" Sarah. "For 6 hours? She's not answering anyone." David. "I'm calling Aunt Linda." I showed the screen to Linda. Right on schedule. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. She looked at me, panicked, and I nodded. She answered. "Hi, David." I couldn't hear his side of the conversation, but I watched Linda's face as she followed my script perfectly. "I don't know." She didn't say. No, I was surprised too. She's been different lately, hard to read. She hung up after 2 minutes. "He wants the address." "Don't give it to him yet." I walked to my leather sofa, butter-soft Italian leather that cost more than all the furniture in my studio apartment combined, and sat down. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them feel what I felt for 3 years. My phone lit up again. A new text, this time just to me. Rebecca. "Mom, I'm sorry we haven't been in touch. Life got crazy. Please call me back. I miss you." I read it twice. Looked for the lie. Found it in the word sorry, not "I'm sorry I ignored you." Just "sorry we haven't been in touch." Like it was something that happened to us instead of something they chose. Linda sat down next to me. "This feels cruel." What's cruel is having 5 healthy, successful children and spending 3 years alone, wondering if any of them would notice if you died. They would have noticed. When? I turned to her. When would they have noticed, Linda? When someone from the laundromat called them? When my landlord found my body after the rent went unpaid? When the bank finally tracked them down about the estate? She didn't have an answer. My phone was quiet for almost 15 minutes after that. I watched the sun start to set through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. Beautiful. The kind of sunset that made you feel small and significant at the same time. Then the calls started again. All 5 of them, in rotation. David, Rebecca, Michael, Jennifer, Sarah, over and over. Like if they just kept trying, I'd eventually break. But I didn't break during 3 years of silence. I wasn't going to break now. At 10:47 p.m., I finally silenced my phone completely. 32 missed calls, 68 text messages, 2 voicemails I'd never listened to. Linda had left an hour earlier, still worried, still confused, but trusting me enough not to interfere. I sat alone in my penthouse, in the dark, and watched the city lights blink below. Tomorrow, I'd respond. Tomorrow, I'd let them in. But tonight, they could wonder. They could worry. They could feel what it's like to be ignored by someone you love. At 7 a.m., I opened the group chat they'd been using to coordinate. I typed one message: "Family dinner at my place, Saturday at 6, don't be late." Then I sent the address. And I waited to see which of them loved me enough to show up. They all came early. I watched from my penthouse window as David's Mercedes pulled into the parking garage at 5:23 p.m., 37 minutes before dinner. Then Rebecca's Lexus at 5:31. Michael's Tesla at 5:38. Jennifer's Range Rover at 5:42. Sarah's Audi at 5:47. All of them, circling like vultures, trying to get here first, trying to get me alone before the others arrived. I didn't buzz any of them up. At exactly 5:58 p.m., my door intercom lit up with all 5 of their names waiting in the lobby. I let them sweat for 2 more minutes, watching the clock on my oven tick down before I pressed the button. "Come up," I said. "All of you, together." The elevator took 45 seconds to reach the 23rd floor. I counted every one of them, standing in my doorway, my hand on the handle. When the doors opened, I saw them all crammed inside. David in front, of course, in his tailored suit. Rebecca next to him in designer everything. Michael with his expensive watch. Jennifer with her fresh highlights. Sarah in the back, the youngest, looking more nervous than the rest. They stepped out and saw me standing there. "Mom!" David moved first, arms outstretched for a hug I wasn't ready to give. I stepped back. "Come in." The shift in their faces was instant. Confusion. Hurt. But they recovered fast, they were good at that, and filed into my apartment, carrying their offerings like guilty children. Flowers from Rebecca, wine from David, a gift bag from Jennifer. Nothing from Michael except his presence, which he clearly thought was enough. Sarah held a card in both hands. Homemade, the envelope already wrinkled from nervous fingers. "Mom, this place is..." Rebecca stopped in the middle of my living room, her eyes tracking across the vaulted ceilings, the chandelier, the windows. "How did you afford it?" I finished. "That's your first question?" "No, I didn't mean," she flushed. "I just meant, it's beautiful. So beautiful. You deserve this." "Do I?" I walked past her to the dining room, where I'd had everything catered. The table was set for 6 with china I'd bought specifically for this dinner. White plates, crystal glasses, real silver. I'd spent $4,000 on this meal. Not because they deserved it, but because I needed them to see it. David followed me, his eyes catching on the artwork hanging on my walls. Original pieces, not prints. I'd watched him pause at the Rothko in the hallway, doing mental math. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, using his CEO voice, the one he used to control board meetings. "You can't just disappear for 3 years and then..." 3 years and 2 days, I corrected. "But who's counting?" Michael laughed, then stopped when he realized no one else was. "She's counting, apparently." I turned to look at my middle son. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him stress weight, probably from the job he posted about constantly. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Sit," I said. "All of you." They moved to the table like children being called to the principal's office. David took the head of the table out of habit until I cleared my throat, and he moved 1 seat down. Rebecca sat next to him. Michael, across. Jennifer beside Michael. Sarah at the far end, as far from everyone as she could get. I took my place at the head of the table and looked at each of them. My children. My beautiful, successful, selfish children. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Of course we came," Jennifer said quickly. "Too quickly. We've been so worried about you. That video Linda posted, we had no idea you'd moved. Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you?" I poured myself a glass of wine. Didn't offer them any yet. When would I have told you? Between the 47 missed calls? Or maybe in response to one of the birthday texts that said, "Happy birthday, Mom," with a single emoji? The table went silent. Rebecca reached for the flowers she'd brought, like she could distract from what I'd just said. "These are for you, your favorite." "Peonies," I said. "Except my favorite flowers are gardenias. Peonies were your father's mother's favorite. You're thinking of her." Rebecca's hand froze halfway across the table. I thought. "It's fine," I said, not meaning it at all. "Easy mistake. You haven't asked me about my life in 3 years. Why would you remember my favorite flower?" "Mom, that's not fair," David started. "Not fair?" I laughed, sharp and cold. "You want to talk about what's not fair? Let me tell you what's not fair, David." I pulled out my phone, opened my photos, started scrolling. "Here's what's not fair. This photo of you in the Bahamas, posted 8 months ago. I called you that day. Did you know that? Called to tell you I'd fallen in the grocery store parking lot and sprained my wrist. You didn't answer. But you had time to post about your vacation. David's face went white. I swiped to the next photo. Rebecca, your kitchen renovation. $60,000 worth of granite and custom cabinets, posted with the caption, "Dreams do come true." I called you that week to ask if you could drive me to a doctor's appointment. You texted back that you were busy with contractors. Rebecca's perfectly made-up eyes started to water. Michael, your home theater. $7,000. I called you the day before asking for a ride to the grocery store. You told me to take an Uber. Michael stared at his plate. Jennifer, your family vacation to Europe, the one where you posted "missing grandma" with a heart emoji while I sat alone in a studio apartment eating soup from a can. Jennifer's lip trembled. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. That's the point. You didn't know because you never asked. Not once, not in 3 years. Sarah hadn't moved. She sat at the end of the table, staring at her homemade card, tears running down her face silently. I let the silence sit for a moment. Let it get heavy and uncomfortable. Let them feel what I'd felt every single day for 1,095 days. Then I stood up and walked to the kitchen, brought back the first course, lobster bisque in tiny porcelain bowls, each one garnished perfectly. I placed them in front of my children like I was serving royalty. Eat, I said. Nobody moved. I said eat. My voice was harder this time. I paid $150 a bowl for that soup. The least you can do is pretend to be grateful. David picked up his spoon with a shaking hand. The others followed. I watched them eat my expensive soup in my expensive apartment at my expensive table, and I waited. Michael broke first. How much is this place? There it was. That's what you want to know? I asked. Not how I've been? Not whether I'm okay? Not why I lived in a studio apartment for 3 years while you all posted about your renovations and vacations? We care about all of that, Rebecca said quickly. But Mom, this apartment, the furniture, the art, where did this money come from? I smiled. Finally. Worried I'm being scammed? Or worried there might not be enough left for you? That's not what I meant. Your father left me very well taken care of, I said simply. I've always had money, I just chose not to use it. You could hear the mental calculations happening around the table. 5 brains all doing the same math, trying to figure out how much very well taken care of meant. Why? Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice small. Why did you live like that if you didn't have to? I looked at my youngest daughter, the only one who'd asked a question that wasn't about money. Because I needed to know something, I said. I needed to know if any of you loved me when you thought I had nothing to give you. The color drained from David's face. Mom, we've always loved you. Have you? I pulled out a folder from the sideboard behind me, set it on the table with a heavy thud. Because I have documentation that says otherwise. Rebecca's hands started shaking. What is that? A record. I opened the folder. Every call I made that went to voicemail. Every text I sent that got one-word responses. Every holiday I spent alone. Every birthday you forgot. 3 years of proof that not one of you cared enough to make sure I was okay. I pulled out the pages one by one, laid them across the table like evidence in a trial. David, 47 missed calls. Rebecca, 52. Michael, 39. Jennifer, 44. Sarah, 31. Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. And here's my favorite part, I continued, pulling out another set of papers. The group chat you created called Mom Management. Do you remember that, Rebecca? Since it was your idea? Rebecca's face went from white to green. How did you? Sarah showed me, I said simply, and 4 heads turned to stare at my youngest daughter. Sarah's tears fell harder. I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't keep lying. There's nothing to be sorry for, I told her. You're the only one who told me the truth. I read from the printed messages. My voice was steady, even though my hands wanted to shake. Mom called again. Just let it go to voicemail. That was you, David. And this one. She's so needy lately. When does it stop? That was Jennifer. And my personal favorite, from Michael. She'll get over Dad eventually. We just need to give her space. Michael pushed his chair back. We were trying to help you. By abandoning me? My voice cracked for the first time. By deciding I was too much trouble? By treating me like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved? It wasn't like that, Jennifer said, crying now. We were grieving too. We didn't know how to show up, I finished. How to call your mother. How to ask if she needs anything. It's not that complicated, Jennifer. You just do it. The caterer's food sat on the table, getting cold. $4,000 worth of perfectly prepared dinner that no one was eating. David stood up. You set us up. You tested us. That's manipulation, Mom. That's what? I stood too, facing him across the table. That's learning the truth about who my children really are? Yes, David. I tested you, and you all failed spectacularly. So what now? Michael's voice was sharp, defensive. You brought us here to punish us? To make us feel guilty? I looked at each of them. My children, who I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for. Who I'd put through college and supported through hard times. Who I'd loved unconditionally for their entire lives. Until they decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. No, I said quietly. I brought you here to tell you what happens next. I reached back to the sideboard and pulled out 5 envelopes. Cream-colored, expensive paper. Each one with a name written in my handwriting. David, Rebecca, Michael, Jennifer, Sarah. These are for you, I said, placing them on the table. Your inheritance, the thing you've all been thinking about since Linda posted that video. 5 pairs of eyes locked onto those envelopes like they were treasure maps. But there's a catch, I continued. And you're not going to like it. David reached for his envelope first. I slapped my hand down on top of it before his fingers could touch the paper. Not yet, I said. He pulled back like I'd burned him. Mom, what are you? Sit down, all of you, and listen. They sat, slowly, like children who just realized they were in more trouble than they thought. I stayed standing, needed the height, needed them to look up at me for once. Your father and I had 43 years together. I started. 43 years of marriage, 5 children, a whole life built from nothing. And in all that time, do you know what he worried about most? Silence. Not money. Not his health, even when the cancer came. Not even dying. I paused. He worried about you. About what kind of people you'd become. Rebecca's mascara was running now, black streaks down her carefully made-up face. Dad loved us. He did. More than anything. I walked around the table, trailing my fingers across the backs of their chairs. But love doesn't make you blind. And in those last few months, when he knew he was dying, he saw things clearly. I stopped behind David's chair. My oldest, the one who'd promised at the funeral that he'd take care of me. He saw how you only called when you wanted something, how you measured every conversation in terms of what you could get, how you treated us like an ATM with bad hours. David's jaw clenched. That's not... It is. I moved to Rebecca. He saw how you compared everything we gave you to what we gave your siblings, how nothing was ever enough, how you kept a running tally in your head of who got what, when, why. Rebecca made a choking sound. He saw how Michael only showed up for holidays if there was something in it for him, how Jennifer treated us like babysitters for her kids, but never just as grandparents worth visiting. How Sarah... I stopped at my youngest daughter's chair. How Sarah went along with all of it because she didn't want to be the difficult one. Sarah's shoulders shook with silent sobs. So he made me a promise, I continued, walking back to my place at the head of the table. And I made him one back. I picked up my wine glass, took a long sip, made them wait. 3 months before he died, your father changed his will, completely rewrote it with a lawyer I'd never met. And he made me swear not to open it until 1 year after his death. Said I'd understand why when the time came. Michael leaned forward. What did it say? I'm getting to that. I set down my glass. But first, you need to understand what your father knew that you didn't. I walked to the sideboard and pulled out an old leather journal. My husband's handwriting covered every page. His writing got worse as the cancer progressed, shakier, but still him. He kept a record too, I said, opening it to a random page. Want to hear some of it? No one answered. but I read anyway. March 15th. David called today. Didn't ask how I was feeling. Spent 20 minutes talking about his portfolio and whether we thought he should invest in tech stocks. When I tried to tell him about the new treatment, he said he had a meeting and hung up. David's face crumbled. I flipped pages. June 3rd. Rebecca came to visit, spent the whole time on her phone planning her kitchen renovation. Asked if we had $70,000 we could loan her. When I said we needed to save for medical bills, she left early. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hand. August 22nd. Michael missed his mother's birthday. Didn't call, didn't text, posted on Facebook about his new boat. Michael stared at the table. October 10th. Jennifer dropped the grandkids off for the weekend without asking. Said she and Tom needed a couple's retreat. When we tried to say we weren't feeling up to it, she cried until we agreed. Didn't call once while they were gone to check on us or the kids. Jennifer's whole body shook. December 1st. Sarah called. Actually asked how I was doing, but when I started to tell her about being scared, she changed the subject to her engagement. I don't think she can handle the truth about dying. None of them can. Sarah's sob broke the silence. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to handle it, I finished. None of you did. So you didn't try. I closed the journal and held it against my chest. Your father wrote in this every day for the last 6 months of his life. And every day, he documented how his children, the people he loved most in the world, slowly stopped seeing him as a person and started seeing him as a dying obligation. The silence was suffocating. So he changed his will, I continued, and he gave me instructions. I set the journal down and picked up the envelopes again. He left me everything, all of it. $8 million, give or take, from his uncle's inheritance and 40 years of smart investing. Money you didn't know about because we lived modestly and never talked about finances with you. 5 heads snapped up. I watched the number register. 8 million, divided 5 ways in their heads before they could stop themselves. But, I said, and their faces froze, he put conditions on your inheritance. What conditions? David's voice was barely above a whisper. I opened my own envelope, the one I'd kept separate from theirs. Inside was a letter in my husband's handwriting, the last thing he ever wrote to me. I'm going to read you something, I said. Your father's final words about each of you. I cleared my throat and began. David, my firstborn, my son who I taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball, who I stayed up with all night when he had nightmares, who I loved from the first second I held him. I looked at David. His face was wet with tears. David has become someone I don't recognize. Someone who measures love in dollars and relationships in ROI. If he's reading this, it means his mother tested him after I died, and I'm guessing he failed. David, you get your inheritance only if you can prove for 6 months, without knowing the amount that you love your mother more than her money. David made a sound like he'd been shot. I moved to the next letter. Rebecca, my princess, who I took to father-daughter dances and taught to change a tire, who called me daddy until she was 16. I paused. Rebecca needs to remember that family isn't about keeping score. Her inheritance comes with the same condition as David's, but with one addition. She must apologize to every family member she's compared gifts with, and mean it. Rebecca's face went into her hands. Michael, my practical son, who helped me fix the car and mow the lawn, who I thought would be the stable one. I felt my voice crack but pushed through. Michael forgot that showing up matters. His inheritance is conditional on 6 months of weekly visits. Miss even one, and it's gone. Michael's expensive watch caught the chandelier light as his hand shook. Jennifer, my creative girl, who painted with me in the garage and made up stories at bedtime. Tears ran down my face now, but I kept reading. Jennifer needs to learn that people aren't tools. Her inheritance requires 6 months of visits where she doesn't ask for anything. Not babysitting, not money, not help. Just time. Jennifer sobbed openly. Sarah, my baby, who I held longest because I knew she'd be my last, who always wanted to make everyone happy. I looked at my youngest daughter. Sarah needs to find her voice. Her inheritance requires her to be honest, brutally honest for 6 months. No more going along to keep peace. Say what you really think, even if it hurts. Sarah's eyes met mine, wide and terrified. I set down the letter. Those are your father's conditions. But there's one more thing he wrote, one more paragraph that applies to all of you. I picked up the last page, the one that had made me cry for an hour when I first read it. If they all fail, if none of them can prove they love their mother for 6 months without knowing what they'll get, then give everything to charity, every penny. Let them know that their inheritance was real, was waiting for them, was theirs for the taking. And let them know they lost it because they couldn't love their own mother for half a year. The room exploded. That's insane! Michael stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. 6 months of jumping through hoops for money that's already ours? It's not yours, I said calmly. It was never yours. It was your father's. Then it became mine. And now it's conditional. You can't do this, David said, but his voice was weak. There has to be a way to contest. Go ahead, I interrupted. Contest it. I have 3 lawyers who say this will is ironclad. Your father made sure of it. He knew you'd try this. Rebecca stood up, her designer purse clutched to her chest like a shield. This is cruel. This is fair, I finished. This is fair. You get a chance to prove you're not the people your father feared you'd become. You get 6 months to show me you remember how to love someone without expecting something in return. And if we don't want to? Michael's face was red. If we don't want to play this sick game? I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Then you walk out that door right now, and you never get a penny. Your inheritance goes straight to the children's hospital where your father spent his last weeks. They'll name a wing after him. Your father's money will help hundreds of sick kids instead of 5 ungrateful adults. I picked up the envelopes and held them out. So here's your choice. Take your envelope. Read the specific conditions your father set for you. Agree to 6 months of proving you're better than you've been. Or leave now and live with the fact that you couldn't love your own mother for half a year, even with millions on the line. 5 hands reached for 5 envelopes. But Sarah pushed hers back across the table. I don't want it, she whispered. Everyone turned to stare at her. I don't want the money, she said louder, her voice shaking but steady. I want my mom back. I want to not be the person who let you sit alone for 3 years. Her voice broke. I want to be someone Dad would be proud of, even if I get nothing. I felt something crack in my chest, something I'd kept locked and frozen for 1,095 days. Then you've already passed his test, I said softly. Michael slammed his hand on the table. So she gets everything? Because she gave a good speech? No, I said, because she meant it. But you all still get your chance. I pulled out one more document, the real one, the one that would change everything. There's something else your father did, something I didn't tell you yet. 5 pairs of eyes locked onto the paper in my hands. Your father set up a trust, $8 million divided equally 5 ways. Each of you gets $1.6 million, but only if you complete your 6 months. And here's the part you're really not going to like. I paused. Let them lean forward. Let them hope. If any of you fail, your share doesn't go to charity. It goes to whichever siblings succeed. So if only one of you makes it the full 6 months, they get the whole $8 million. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. I watched them all look at each other not as siblings anymore, but as competition. You're turning us against each other, Rebecca said. No, I corrected. I'm showing you who you already are. Now you get to decide if you want to be better. David stood up. When does it start? Tonight. Right now. The clock starts the second you leave this apartment. And we can't know the amount until the end? Jennifer asked. You know it's $1.6 million if you all succeed, but you also know it could be more if others fail. I smiled. Your father was clever that way. He made sure you'd be tempted. Made sure it would be hard. Michael grabbed his envelope. Fine. 6 months. I can do 6 months. But I saw him glance at his siblings, calculating who'd quit first. They all stood up, clutching their envelopes, their untouched, expensive dinner forgotten. As they filed toward the door, I called out one last thing. Oh, and one more condition I forgot to mention. They all turned. You can't tell anyone about the money. Not your spouses, not your friends, no one. If I find out you've told anyone what you stand to inherit, you're disqualified immediately. How will you know? Michael challenged. I held up my phone. Your father hired a private investigator on retainer. She'll be watching, always watching. So choose your words carefully for the next 6 months. The color drained from Michael's face. Sarah was the last one out. She stopped in the doorway and turned back. Mom, I really am sorry. For all of it. I know, I said. That's why you might actually make it. The door closed behind them, and I was alone in my penthouse with $5,000 worth of uneaten food and the ghost of my husband's voice in my head. Make them prove it, he'd said in those final days. Make them show you who they really are. I walked to the window and watched 5 expensive cars pull out of the parking garage one by one. 6 months. 6 months to see if any of my children remembered how to be human. The game had begun. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my dining table with the leather journal open in front of me, reading my husband's words by the glow of the city lights. Every page was a reminder of what I already knew but hadn't wanted to admit. My children had stopped loving me years before he died. They'd just hidden it better when he was alive. At 6:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I read it. All of it. Mom, I don't know what to say. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Then don't say anything. Just show up. Tuesday, 10 a.m. Coffee. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I'll be there. 1 down. 4 to go. By 8 a.m., my phone had 11 missed calls. David, Rebecca, and Michael, all trying to reach me. Probably comparing notes. Probably forming alliances. Probably doing exactly what their father predicted they'd do. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I got dressed, made myself breakfast in my marble kitchen, and waited. The envelopes I'd given them weren't just letters from their father. They were mirrors. Each one contained a detailed list, every missed call, every canceled visit, every lie they'd told about being too busy. 3 years of receipts, documented with dates and times, and their own words quoted back to them. David's had 47 entries. I'd watched his face as he opened it at the table, seen the exact moment he realized what he was looking at. The moment he understood that I'd been keeping score the whole time, they thought I wasn't paying attention. Rebecca's had 52, the most, because she'd been the most creative with her excuses. The kids are sick. Work is crazy. We're renovating. Mercury is in retrograde. That last one had actually made me laugh when I wrote it down. Michael's had 39, but his were the most brutal. Straight up ignored calls, texts left unread. The time I'd asked him to help me move a heavy box, and he'd sent me a link to TaskRabbit instead. Jennifer's had 44, each one a variation of, I need you to watch the kids, followed by weeks of silence after I'd helped. And Sarah's. 31 entries, the fewest, but still too many. At 9:15 a.m., someone buzzed my apartment. I checked the camera. David. Alone. I almost didn't let him up. But I pressed the button. Come up. He looked worse than he had at dinner. His expensive suit was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His hair wasn't gelled. His eyes were red. When I opened the door, he just stood there. I read it, he finally said. Every page. Twice. And you're right. About all of it. Every single thing. He pulled the envelope out of his jacket pocket. It was creased, worn, like he'd been holding it all night. I didn't realize. I didn't think. You didn't think I was keeping track, I finished. You thought I'd just forget. That eventually I'd stop trying, and you could pretend everything was fine. He flinched, like I'd slapped him. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked to the living room windows, the same spot where I'd stood watching their cars leave last night. Dad knew, he said quietly. He knew what we were becoming, and he tried to warn us. I remember now. Little comments. You should call your mother more. Family isn't just about holidays. I thought he was being sentimental because he was dying. He was being honest because he was dying, I corrected. Death makes you see things clearly. David turned around. The envelope, the conditions, 6 months of weekly visits, no business talk, no checking my phone, just being here with you. That's what he asked for. And if I miss even one visit, I lose everything. Yes. But you won't tell me how much everything is? I smiled. You already know it's 1.6 million if you all succeed. But you also know it could be 8 million if you're the only one who makes it. His jaw clenched. That's sick. That's incentive, I said. Your father knew exactly what he was doing. He made it worth your time, but he also made it hard enough that you'd have to actually try. David looked down at the envelope in his hands. There's more in here. Things I said, things I did, things I don't even remember saying or doing. July 18th, 3 years ago, I said from memory. I called you crying because it was my first wedding anniversary without your father. You were on the golf course. I could hear your friends in the background. You told me you'd call me back and hung up. You never called back. His face crumbled. I don't remember that. I do. I remember all of them. Every single time you chose golf, or work, or literally anything else over your mother who'd just lost her husband of 43 years. Mom. September 3rd. I texted you asking if you wanted to get dinner. You responded 3 days later with, been slammed, sorry. But you posted pictures from a steakhouse with clients that same night. Stop. October 29th. My birthday. You sent a text at 11:47 p.m. Happy birthday, Mom. Not even the words spelled out. Just letters. Like I was a business contact you'd forgotten about. Stop. His voice cracked. Please. I get it. I was horrible. I am horrible. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush us both. Why are you really here, David? I asked. Did you come to apologize? Or did you come to make sure you don't lose your inheritance? He met my eyes. I don't know. Both? Neither? I stayed up all night reading this envelope and trying to figure out who I am. And I don't like the answer. Good, I said. That's a start. He walked to my couch and sat down, his head in his hands. How do I fix this? You show up, every week, for 6 months. No excuses, no cancellations, no checking your watch or thinking about work or treating me like an obligation. And that's it? That's all Dad wanted? That's everything he wanted, I corrected. For you to see me as a person again, not as a mother you've outgrown or a responsibility you can schedule around, just as someone worth your time. David pulled out his phone, started scrolling through his calendar. I have a board meeting on Tuesdays, and Wednesdays I have... David. He looked up. If you're already trying to figure out how to fit me into your schedule, you've already failed. His phone slipped from his hands onto the couch. What do you want me to do? Quit my job? Cancel everything? I want you to want to be here, I said simply. That's what your father wanted too. For you to choose me, not because you have to, because you want to. And if I can't? I shrugged. Then you'll be $1.6 million poorer, and you'll have to live with knowing you couldn't spend 6 months loving your mother. He stood up, paced to the windows, came back. This is manipulation. This is consequences, I said, for 3 years of treating me like I didn't exist. We didn't. You did. My voice was hard now. You all did. And now you get to decide if money is more important than making it right. David picked up his phone, stared at it, then did something I didn't expect. He turned it off, completely off. Fine, he said. 6 months. When do we start? Right now. Sit down. Tell me about your life. Not work, not money. You, the person I raised, the son I used to know. He sat. And for the first time in 3 years, we talked. Really talked. About his marriage that was struggling. About his daughter who he barely saw because of work. About how he'd been so busy building an empire that he'd forgotten why he was building it. 2 hours later, when he left, he looked lighter somehow, and more terrified. Mom? He said at the door. The others, are they going to make it? I don't know, I said honestly. But you should be more worried about yourself. After he left, my phone exploded. Rebecca, can we talk? Please? Michael, this is bullshit, but I'm in. When do I come over? Jennifer, I need to see you. Today. It's important. I responded to none of them. Let them stew. Let them panic. Let them feel what uncertainty feels like. At 2 p.m., Rebecca showed up without calling first. I watched her on the camera, finger hovering over the buzzer, pulling back, hovering again. I let her buzz 3 times before I answered. You can't just show up, I said through the intercom. Please, Mom, I need to talk to you. Then call and make an appointment like everyone else. I've been calling. You're not answering. Then maybe you should know how that feels. The silence on the other end was long. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I deserve that. Yes, you do. Can I please come up? 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I looked at the clock, looked at the camera showing Rebecca in her designer clothes and perfect hair, standing in my lobby like a stranger begging for an audience. 5 minutes, I said, and buzzed her up. She practically ran out of the elevator. Her eyes were swollen. Her makeup was smudged. The envelope was clutched in her hand, pages sticking out, highlighted in yellow and pink and blue. I categorized them, she said, holding it up. The missed calls. I made a spreadsheet. By month, by reason, by how bad each excuse was. She laughed, but it came out like a sob. Do you want to know which category had the most? I didn't answer. Too busy with house stuff, she said. 37 times I told you I couldn't see you because of something with my house. Furniture delivery, contractor meetings, paint samples. 37 times I chose my kitchen backsplash over my mother. She sank onto my couch, the envelope falling open in her lap. Pages covered in her neat handwriting, color-coded, organized. Even in her breakdown, she'd made it a project. I read what Dad wrote about me, she whispered. About keeping score, about comparing. He was right. I've spent my whole adult life adding up who got what from you and Dad. Who got the bigger check at Christmas? Who you babysat for more? Who you called first when you had good news? Did you ever stop to think that maybe I called David first because he was born first? I asked. Or that I babysat Jennifer's kids more because she asked more? Or that the checks were equal until you started keeping track of them? She looked up. What? You created the competition, Rebecca, not us. You decided everything was a contest and then got mad when you didn't win. That's not. She stopped, started again. Is that really what I did? Read your envelope. Your father documented it. Every time you called to ask what I got someone else. Every time you complained about unfairness that didn't exist. Every time you made love into math. She bent over like she was going to be sick. How do I fix it? I handed her a tissue from the box on the coffee table. You do what your father asked. You apologize to everyone, and you mean it. That's it? No. You also show up for 6 months without calculating what you're getting in return, without comparing your visits to your siblings' visits, without keeping score. And if I can't? Then you lose everything, and prove your father right. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. He really thought I was that bad? He thought you could be better, I corrected. That's why he gave you the chance. Rebecca stood up, clutching her color-coded spreadsheet of shame. At the door, she turned back. Did David come by already? There it was. The scorekeeping, even now. That's exactly what your father was talking about, I said softly. Her face flushed. Right. Sorry. She took a breath. I'll see you next week. For my visit. No comparisons. I promise. After she left, I got a text from Michael. I'm not playing this game. But I'm not walking away either. Tell me when to show up and I'll be there. But I'm doing this my way. I smiled. Michael, my stubborn middle child who thought he could negotiate everything. I texted back, your father's will isn't a negotiation. Follow the conditions or lose the money. Your choice. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Fine. Thursday, 7 p.m. See you then. Jennifer called at 4 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 4:07. Again, at 4:15. At 4:23, she started texting. Mom, please pick up. I need to talk about the envelope. There's something in here that's not fair. You took things out of context. Mom, please. At 4:30, I called her back. What's not fair, Jennifer? The babysitting stuff. You made it sound like I used you. But you offered. You said you wanted to spend time with the kids. I did want to spend time with them, I said calmly. What I didn't want was to be treated like a free daycare service that you only called when you needed something. That's not. February 12th. You dropped the kids off for an emergency date night. Didn't call to check on them once. March 3rd. You asked me to watch them so you could go to a spa day. April 19th. Another emergency. May 7th. Another spa day. You're making me sound like a terrible mother. I'm making you sound like a daughter who forgot she had a mother. I interrupted. You called me when you needed something. You never called just to talk, just to see how I was, just to say you loved me. Silence. The condition for your inheritance is 6 months of visits where you don't ask me for anything. Can you do that, Jennifer? More silence. I don't know, she finally whispered. I don't know how to just be with you without needing something. Then you have 6 months to figure it out. I hung up. At 9 p.m., Sarah texted again. I can't stop reading mine. Every page makes me hate myself more. I called her. Stop reading it, I said when she answered. I can't. Mom, the things I said, the things I went along with, the group chat. Sarah, stop. She was crying. I could hear it in her breathing. You're the only one who told me the truth, I said. You're the only one who showed up at dinner and said you didn't want the money. You meant it, didn't you? Yes. God, yes. I don't care about the money. I care that I let you down, that I let Dad down. Then prove it. Come have coffee with me tomorrow, and we'll start over. Just like that? Just like that. She was quiet for a long moment. What about the others? What about them? Are they going to make it? The 6 months? I looked at my phone, at the string of missed calls and desperate texts. 5 children, all scrambling to save their inheritance, all calculating whether 6 months was worth $1.6 million. Or $8 million if they were the last one standing. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm going to find out.